On August 30, precisely at 7 a.m., Flamingo missiles launched from Ukraine's Odessa coastline at hypersonic speeds, streaking toward strategic targets in Crimea. These bulky missiles barreled straight into the heart of Russia's defensive network at a blistering pace. They appeared primed for interception by the S-400 system. The 3 Flamingo missiles presented easy targets when fired in broad daylight. At that moment, Russian commanders were plying a fresh offensive through Crimea and misread Ukraine's preparations as purely defensive. Yet this complacency overlooked signals of a meticulously planned assault, exploiting Russia's dispersed forces as they geared up for their own push. If you back Ukraine, drop a 1 in the comments. In truth, Ukraine had meticulously calculated this scenario. The strike timing hit at the enemy's most vulnerable instant, exposing gaps in the defensive array. The 3 Flamingo missiles, each weighing 15,432 pounds, with a range of 1,864 miles and capacity for a 2,535-pound warhead, had been hauled to launch positions. These missiles featured cutting-edge guidance suites, including GPS, inertial, and digital terrain matching, enabling flawless performance amid intense electronic jamming. This marked the Flamingo missile's public debut in a calculated strike. As the missiles mounted launchers, Crimea's S-400 air defense shield operated at peak capacity. Thus, scoring direct hits and fulfilling the mission proved no simple feat. Russia's air defense grid, backed by the 96 L6AP radar and Pantsir S-1 batteries, stood built to spot and shred low-altitude intruders, but Ukraine leveraged synchronized assault tactics to swamp their processing power. Kyiv embraced every hazard, for today a minor variable would alter the battlefield equation. A mere millisecond delay in tracking and a skewed priority list unfolded. Russian brass dismissed it as a defensive glitch. In reality, that lag stemmed from a deliberate jamming campaign spearheaded by UJ-26 unmanned aerial vehicles to spoof radars and scramble Russia's signal chain. Ukrainian engineers calibrated each Flamingo missile for precise low-altitude flight, hugging below radar horizons to boost survival odds against interceptors. Beyond the missiles, long-range UJ-26 loitering munitions formed a key strike element. Around 7 a.m., as the operation kicked off, the Russian security service building in Armyansk buzzed with activity. Meanwhile, the Russian intelligence units on site failed to grasp they were about to become the focal point of a coordinated barrage. Russian commanders and intel officers were deep in drone strike planning against southern Ukrainian towns. At the same time, helicopter pad operations along the Simferopol axis neared rollout. Russia's coastal security patrol plan along the Sevastopol line locked in for the morning shift. This fixation on offensive moves left Russia blind to their Crimean defenses stretching to breaking point. The anomaly kicked off with faint radar pings from UJ-26 drones, jamming detection systems and delaying target classification. The UJ-26 drones and 3 Flamingo missiles forged a strike package that left Russian intel officers and Black Sea Fleet units reeling. In the opening phase, drones infiltrated Crimean airspace. These UJ-26 units, clocking 93 to 112 miles per hour with a 55 to 66-pound explosive payload, stood designed to hammer critical infrastructure, disrupting Russia's command chain. The UJ-26 drones were slated to reach Crimea in 45 to 50 minutes of flight time. Roughly 30 minutes after their launch, the 3 Flamingo missiles fired. Their approach to target clocked at about 15 minutes. This tactic guaranteed Russian air defenses faced simultaneous threats, slashing interception rates. Put another way,
Both drones and missiles would pile pressure on Crimean airspace, with targets hammered concurrently by these weapons. As drones neared Crimea, the 3 Flamingo missiles launched at 5-second intervals, each shifting to terrain-following mode parallel to the coastline at low altitude. This let missiles exploit terrain to evade Russian radars for extended periods. The altitude sensor, inertial guidance, and GPS formed a triple redundant backup. Should GPS drop, radar altimeter and digital terrain reference took priority. Missile speed held subsonic. Specifically, 590 miles per hour ensured the Flamingo maintained stability at 66 to 98-foot altitudes, below the radar floors of S-400 and Panzer S-1 systems.
The Flamingo missile's warhead mass and range tailored it for tactical strikes. The 2,535-pound payload surpassed thresholds for structural collapse or functional paralysis in a single blow, blending overpressure and fragmentation in subsurface voids via delayed bunker-busting fuses. This warhead, packing double the punch of a Tomahawk missile, could punch through hardened sites and wreak havoc on military infrastructure. The 1,864-mile range offered vast routing flexibility. This allowed Ukraine to fire from standoff positions far from the front, catching Russia off guard and complicating defensive schemes. Moreover, the Flamingo missile, built with fiberglass composite airframes, resisted Russian electronic warfare suites. In this mission, close-in targets loomed, but diverse approach vectors from the long range and launch site ambiguity bedeviled Russian defensive planning. Initial strike effects came from the drones. The UJ-26 units, with low radar cross-sections, sowed early chaos, forcing Russian air defenses to scatter resources in response. Low-altitude loitering UJ-26 drones pressed in from northwest and northeast Crimea at treetop heights. Each UJ-26 carried a potent 55 to 66-pound warhead. Their composite bodies and tiny radar signatures yielded just 1 or 2 cells per fixed antenna sweep, delivering collision geometry to power substations, oil pipelines, and fiber optic comms nodes. These targets got picked for their role as command and control choke points, where destruction would cascade across Russia's defensive web. Drone speeds varied from 93 to 112 miles per hour, with flight control via GPS fused with INS and optical backup referencing. Range parameters held at 124 to 249 miles depending on target, sufficient to reach endgame via inertial guidance even under jamming. Blind strikes amplified signal processing delays, shrinking reaction windows to mere seconds. This left even advanced Russian air defenses unable to counter multi-axis threats in time. This meant Russian air defenses had scant time to intercept without errors, yet Ukraine's drones closed on targets swiftly to erase any intercept window entirely. The first blind hit slammed the 96 L6 AP radar's power substation. The blast, while not fully wrecking the radar, cut power feeds, forging a critical detection lag for follow-on targets. Minutes later, the coastal surveillance unit's MR-10M1 waveguide got shredded. This blackout crippled radar signal relays, leaving nearby Russian air defense crews effectively blind for vital minutes. Antennas kept spinning, but signal carriers lay severed. In Crimea's dense net, total 100% blackout proved unrealistic. True value lay in forging a few minutes delay in the response chain.
Those delay minutes became golden hours for Flamingo missiles to close on targets unmolested. Low-tier Pantsir and Tor batteries reacted on instinct. 2 loitering drones got downed, but 4 more reached target cabins, and this dispersed assault bred an in-between state. Radar nets seemingly operational, yet yielding no meaningful tracks. The scatter disrupted Russian target prioritization, preventing focus on prime threats. Right then, the planned strike wave rolled in. For even as defenses fired, tracking lags and radar horizon limits couldn't block a low-flying missile's penetration. Now came time for 2 Flamingo missiles to zero the Russian FSB building in Armyansk and 1 to level Sevastopol. This assault aimed to maximize damage to Russian command hubs and strategic infrastructure. Another major Ukraine risk loomed in GPS jamming. Thus, Flamingo routes backed up with digital terrain, GPS INS, and altimetry. Flamingo 1 targeted the border security and intel base's command and communications bunker. This missile programmed for pinpoint strikes on comms and command nodes, paralyzing Russian coordination. The warhead type was delayed action high-explosive penetrator. This setup triggered internal blasts post-penetration of outer shells. The bunker variant held millisecond delays in thick slabs, amplifying shockwaves indoors. The detonation targeted sensitive electronics and network spines inside, ensuring instant command center shutdown. The goal wasn't external demolition, but functional kill. Power distribution, network backbones, rack mounts, cable trays, infrastructure cores all drew fire. Flamingo 1 neared target coordinates. The missile skimmed at 66 to 82 feet, using urban terrain to dodge detection until the final seconds. Altitude stabilized between 66 and 82 feet. At last, the strike landed. The FSB building's outer concrete shell held firm. Yet the internal blast gutted electronics and comms systems, crippling Russia's Armyansk command hub. With a half-second delay, the inner detonation severed power spines. Command room terminals lit up, but networks went dark. Field radio bridges cut out. This blackout left local Russian units unable to receive central orders, snapping the command chain for hours. The operational impact rang crystal clear. Lights on, but data off. For defenders, this proved deadlier than full blackout. Russian officers saw radar screens alive, yet couldn't analyze or react to follow-on threats in time. Decision-makers wasted precious seconds on false feeds. As this crisis raged inside the FSB building, Flamingo 2 locked onto the junction of the Power Grid Management Center and Field Comms Cabin in the same complex. The fuse again set delayed. This target got chosen to neuter backups too, stretching Russian recovery from days to weeks. Ukraine then shifted to the operation's next phase. Flamingo 3 entered terminal approach towards Sevastopol. This stage zeroed on a wrecking port infrastructure, disrupting Black Sea Fleet operations. The aim hit a small pier where patrol craft moored. 2 strike points picked, the fuel supply line and a compact pier command shack. Why these 2? Because severing those lines rendered even a hardened pier useless. Destroying them broke Russia's fuel logistics and patrol coordination. Ships couldn't dock, refueling cycles halted, operations stalled. This rendered the harbor entrance unsafe. Flamingo 3 steadied at 49 to 66-foot altitude in endgame.
The missile programmed for precision hits on small targets, leveraging penetrator warhead for maximum effect. The warhead fused for internal detonation. At impact, the fuel line ruptured and the shack blew apart. Mooring piles snapped free. The blast not only trashed infrastructure but halted pier ops for days, weakening Russian patrol deployments. At least one hovercraft-class patrol boat suffered heavy damage after losing moorings. The damaged vessel, identified as the A-8 Kivas or A-25 PS hovercraft, built to carry 8 or 25 armed troops or Marines. For other ships, connections and refueling cycles disrupted. The A-8 Kivas, with a top speed of 69 miles per hour and 186-mile operating radius, ranked a key strategic asset, and disabling it sharply cut Russian patrol reach. At the pier, the dock surface collapsed and fuel lines lay severed. This disruption sidelined Sevastopol harbor's naval support in the near term, giving Ukraine a window to shore up defensive lines. In other words, Russia absorbed a shock from Flamingo missiles and loitering drones in Crimea. So why couldn't Russia stop the strikes on the FSB building in Crimea and the hovercraft in Sevastopol? The S-400 system held no weaknesses. On the contrary, it packed potential to down every cruise missile at once. Yet Ukrainian sources reported 0 missiles downed. The drone missile coordination forged a multi-layered assault that overwhelmed Russian response capacity. Low-level flight, fused with jamming and terrain masking, kept Russian radars from locking targets in time. The 3 Flamingo missiles' first large-scale success showed even a multi-layered shield, paired with heavy warheads and low-altitude profiles, could get neutralized. Estimated Russian losses included FSB command center functionality at Armyansk, valued at about $50 million. Sevastopol pier and fuel line damage, around $20 million. And the A-8 Kivas patrol craft, about $10 million, totaling roughly $80 million. Ukraine expended 3 Flamingo missiles, estimated $5 million apiece, and 6 UJ-26 drones, estimated $0.5 million each, totaling about $18 million. This gap highlighted Ukraine's campaign cost-effectiveness, inflicting over 4 times the invested damage. Thanks for following. If you back Ukraine, drop a 1 in the comments.